Howdy, and welcome back to You've Got People Problems, the podcast where we tackle the leadership challenges that no one wants to talk about, but every business faces. I'm your host, Melissa Ortiz with Activate Human Capital Group. Today's conversation is with Amber Bardon. You'll hear more about her background as we get into the episode, but what matters most is the practical lens she brings to leadership and team dynamics as organizations evolve. In this conversation, we'll talk about how remote work changes communication and expectations, when it's time to have honest conversations instead of holding on too long, and how leaders can navigate change without making it personal. So let's get to it. Howdy, y'all, and welcome to You've Got People Problems. I am Mel Ortiz, and I am joined today by Amber Bardon of Parasol Alliance. And I'm really excited about this topic because it's one that comes up so much, and it's one you'd think that we would have figured out by now after COVID, but it's really about building an award-winning culture in a remote environment. And so many more companies are doing this and trying hard to do it right. So I'm really excited, Amber, to talk to you because you've clearly done this right. You've gotten a ton of awards for the culture that you've built. And I look forward to learning about you. So tell me about Parasol Alliance and how you kind of went down this path.
Sure. Happy to be on the podcast, Mel. Thanks for having me.
Of course.
So I'm Amber Bardon. My company is Parasol Alliance, and we were founded in 2015. We are an IT services company specifically serving the senior living industry. So we do support, on-site support, project management, engineering, that type of thing. And I worked for senior living community for 9 years before I started the company. And when I was looking to make a change with my career, when I was still at that company, I thought at first I would become an IT director, just working for another organization, which was my role at the time. And so I interviewed for multiple IT director jobs, and I was told by one company they'd never interviewed a woman before. It was really important to me that I had flexibility with my time off because my kids were young at that time. And they got sick a lot. And so I wanted to have the ability to work from home or have a flexible schedule. And I had questions like, we don't understand what you're talking about. We have 10 days of PTO and you're eligible to take it after and it just really wasn't what I was looking for. So, multiple things came together to allow me to create my own company. But I knew from day one, I wanted culture to be a huge focus. And so I started the company to be 100% remote, which we always have been for the last 10 years. And put in place a lot of policies and things around our culture to really facilitate what I call the happiest IT company on earth, which is one of our goals that we talk about publicly all the time.
That's charming. It's charming. Thank you for the context. That's really interesting always to me, the origin stories of how founders get started. And I absolutely feel you. I think our kids are similar ages, and the need for flexibility is massive, and the ability to just be there for them is such a gift as a parent. So, for those of you who joined because you know Amber and you don't know me, my name is Melissa Ortiz, and my company is Activate Human Capital Group. And I would say the basis of what we do is we help people do better at their jobs. We make sure you've got the right people in the right seats. We make sure that they're engaged and that they're really thriving so that they can serve your customers better, their well-being is better, and oh, by the way, our performance and financials are better. So the reason this is called You've Got People Problems is that every industry, every company, every sector has people problems, and looking always under rocks and around the corner for better ways to support, encourage, engage, and challenge people is really the purpose of this discussion. So I would love to know a little bit about what are some of the tips and tricks that you use, or some of the rhythms maybe that you use to make sure we're on the right track for Parasol, Amber?
So a couple of things. We're looking at it from both a employee side, which we call our employees allies, Parasol allies,
Okay.
and a client side. So we are a Traction EOS organization, which I understand most of your guests are. So we're very metrics driven. So on our level 10 leadership meeting every Monday, we have a whole set of metrics that we take a look at. And those are client related, they're staff related, satisfaction related. And some of them are just informational. Some of them are trends and things like that. And so if anyone on the call is not familiar with Traction, it's all about getting a grip on your business and understanding where you're at. And metrics are a big part of that. So I think that that's really key to have everybody accountable to the same set of information. I think the other thing is if you want to successfully build a remote culture, I feel like a lot of other companies that have remote work do it as if you're working in the office, but you're at home instead of
Mm.
building an intentional remote culture.
Like a
And
remote first environment versus this is an afterthought.
yeah, or it's just like, you're just working from home. It's the same thing as being in the office, but you're at home, but it's not. And so you have to be very intentional about the policies, procedures, rules, things like, for example, since we're a remote company, we have an internal rule that your camera has to be on for every internal meeting. It's just the ability to see each other, and touch base that way is really important. And then if it's on a client call and if the client has their camera, we turn it on as well.
Okay.
And we're really strict about that because as a remote company, you need to find those ways to connect. And so if you can't see people you work with ever, it's difficult. So I think, we put in place a lot of structure and time and effort to really intentionally create that feeling that we want, that people feel excited to come to work, they feel connected with their coworkers. And one of the things we do is we do town halls twice a year, where I meet with every single employee in small groups. So it's 7 to 8 people at a time. And actually, we're going to be changing this next year because now that we have 100 people, it's kind of a scheduling nightmare. So
Yeah.
I'm going to start doing them monthly with everybody at an anniversary of the prior year. But point being, I touch base with every single person every single year. And I ask them, what are we doing well? What can we do better? And then other areas of feedback. And we take all that data that we gather and we present it back to the company and give action items on what we're going to do. But one of the things we consistently hear as long as we've been doing this, which is, 6 or 7 years at this point, is the number one thing we're doing well is teamwork and collaboration, which given that we're a remote company, it's just been amazing to hear that, especially as we get bigger. When you're a 30-person company versus a 50-person company versus a 100-person company, it does feel different, but we've been able to retain that as a positive of working at Parasol.
So it's interesting you use the word town hall. What came to mind immediately for me was an all hands meeting. Everybody's on one Zoom, but I'm hearing you say these really function a lot more like focus groups led
Mhm.
by you as kind of these like listening posts.
Yeah, so the first part of the meeting is, so we have a monthly all staff where we
Okay.
talk about our strategic goals and things like that, what's going on in the company. So what I do is I go into more detail with that information so that people can ask questions about the goal of the company, or goals of the company, projects we're working on, strategic initiatives, more in a smaller group setting, because not everyone's going to speak up in a 100-person meeting and ask
Sure.
questions. And so we go through that and it gives them a chance to interact with me directly. And then we do ask them the questions. And I found one of the tricks to that is I tell them everybody has to say something different, because I've noticed, like, whatever the first person says, everyone's like, oh, I agree with that. And so, it's almost kind of like a joke, like, oh, who wants to go first? Because you won't be able to use the same thing somebody else said.
That's fun. That's fun. Tell me what kind of things you've learned in the what are we doing well and what could we improve that you didn't have on your radar?
Well, I mean, most of it, I think, were things that we were aware of, but it's good to hear that data be validated. So, like I said, the things we were doing well, people like the collaboration, the teamwork. We just consistently hear that people have worked at other companies where there's like a very, very siloed environment of almost an environment of fear. Like, I'm not allowed to ask questions, or if I ask questions, it'll, like, people won't help me. And that everyone here is very welcoming and friendly and helpful. And, again, we don't retain people that aren't going to be like that. So that's also very intentional that way. Firing is a very key part of building your culture, the part that people don't like to talk about as much. So that part that we've heard, people like the work-life balance. So out of, our employees are remote. So we're in 25 or 26 states, but we do have people that are living near our client locations in the 11 states that we do this in, that we have clients in, and they're going in person to the client a couple of days a week. So people like that mix who are in that type of role. People like the transparency of leadership, the way that we have these sessions. I also do CEO welcome calls one-on-one with every new employee.
Oh,
Um,
wow.
yeah. And then some of the things that we learned we weren't doing well, I think it has built a lot of credibility by the things we've done to address those. So for years, we heard that documentation was one of our biggest pain points. And when we're managing, multiple different IT environments, 50 different IT environments, documentation is really hard to keep up with. So we heard people's feedback. We hired a documentation specialist. And so now we're starting to hear that that's positive. People come in and say, oh, your documentation is really good.
Hmm.
So
As a
it's
new hire.
been, Yeah, yeah. So it's been good to hear like the actual consistency. And I've had people ask me like, are you getting honest feedback in these? Are people going to be intimidated talking to the CEO? And so far we have like, not every single group is the same, but people are generally interactive and asking questions. And I think it's because of the other things I do. So I also do a monthly CEO Ask Me Anything meeting that anybody can join and just like literally ask anything.
Is
Um,
that part of the monthly all hands or a separate
separate.
discussion? Okay.
Yeah, separate.
They
Yeah.
have a lot of access to you, Amber. That's awesome.
Yeah. I mean, I think it's a part of the culture, like it's essential. And then also Slack, like where Slack is our main tool. So, I'm in Slack, I'm answering questions that come up, people can reach out to me. So, yeah, I just think that that's important. Leadership has to be visible and be transparent, and be available.
And that's hard when you're physically not around. You can't pop indoors. There's no open door policy. Um,
In some ways, it's almost easier too, though, because anybody on Slack can reach out versus like
yeah,
having to walk up to an office.
sure. In some ways, it's less intimidating. Take me back to, you said something really important that I think we don't give enough credence to, which is terminating people who simply don't fit here, who can tear our culture down if we don't regulate,
Mhm.
either tell them what's acceptable and they turn it around, or they just don't fit and it's not the way that they're wired, and that's okay. They just don't belong here. How do you figure out it's not a fit? How do you approach it? Um, Tell me a little bit about some of the termination pathways that you lean on to to hold that culture sacred.
Yeah, I mean, I'm sure you've heard the saying hire slow, fire fast.
Sure.
So I think it does start with hiring. You're going to have constant turnover if you aren't being really selective with your hiring. And that's hard, especially remote. You can't meet people in person. So some of the things we've done from the hiring perspective, so we use predictive index. I'm not sure if you're familiar with that.
Yep, I'm a PI practitioner and provider, so
Okay,
that's awesome.
excellent. Yeah, so that was huge. Because as you're aware, maybe your listeners don't know, but it built a profile of the right type of natural skill set that or natural behaviors that someone will have that will make them be successful in the role. So that's great. We use that, in hiring. I just had some turnover in my HR team, and with my new HR people, we're going to be doing more focus on implementing PI day to day with our team because we just mostly use it for hiring right now, and there's so much more
Okay.
potential for it. We do a technical lab with all of our technical positions because, again, you have to make sure people can do the job. And we do a lot once that person has come on board. We just do a lot with onboarding to make sure that we're retaining them. And then we have an entire career development program. So we have something called Parasol Academy, which is both a professional and new employee mentorship program that includes like each position in our company is listed with what internally someone needs to do to move into that role in terms of specific hard skills, soft skills, certifications they can get, things like that.
Okay.
And then we have the other side of Parasol Academy is our learning program, which is 4 different sessions a month, which is like an employee can just do a soft skill just for fun, like how to make bread or something like that. We have a leadership one, which is called From the Top. We have a technical training. And then I'm not thinking of the fourth one off the top of my head, but we basically have 4 different, learning opportunities. And one of the things we want to do is we'll actually roll that out to our clients and do a client Parasol Academy where we're teaching them technology tips and tricks as well. So that kind of is like my very long way of kind of leading to the firing piece. But, before that we started recording, you and I were talking a little bit about how to do like a values assessment, values fit. And so the values of our company are things that we talk about a lot and they're important, but it is difficult to always incorporate that into reviews. And you actually gave me a really great idea before this call is to do like a grading scale on the values. But even though we don't always have the best formal way to assess the values, it's something we're always talking and thinking about. And so we're constantly having conversations at the leadership level. So we do a daily Zoom call with the whole company. It's supposed to be mandatory. Obviously, not everybody can come, especially because we're in 4 different time zones. So, but we want people to show up at least once a week, right? And if there's somebody who's consistently not showing up to those meetings, it's like, why aren't they participating in our culture? And that's something we want people that work here that want to participate. Like, do they have to always be in the Slack chat, talking about gaming or whatever's going on for that day and making jokes, which there's a lot of that. No, but like, we do need to see people. It's, sometimes forget people work here when they don't even come to those calls, being virtual. And so we assess for that. And then, of course, any type of behavior that's not in line with our values, just not tolerated, not accepted. And that person won't work here anymore. But I think where it gets difficult is, I get asked a lot on podcasts is like, what's the biggest lesson learned as a CEO of a growing company? And it really is that you have to have the right people. And I mean, that's like a cliche. Everybody knows that, but
There's a reason it's a cliche.
yeah. And there's what I didn't realize is the people that you need and the people that you have changes as your company grows. So someone that you hired when you were a 20-person company and may have been a really good resource for you is not the right person at 100 people. And some people can evolve through that and some people can't. And that can be hard when you've had people that have been here for a while and the culture has moved on, or the needs of the position have moved on.
I have an episode we did just a few ago that is about when you outgrow your employees, and it talks about it specifically like that. And the woman who's a recruiter that was on Katie McConnell Olson, she was talking about it like if you go in your closet and you put on a pair of pants and it doesn't fit anymore, you take the pants off and you put it back on the shelf, or you put them in the giveaway pile.
Mm-hmm.
And but we don't do that with employees. And when we're small, we hire employees that we want to be like Swiss Army knives and they can do all the things. But as we get more mature as a company, we need a butcher's knife and a paring knife and these different things. Our needs change. And sometimes what got us here won't get us there. And it's in my experience working with business owners, it's a really hard thing for them to address sometimes because they're very loyal people and they don't want to let someone down that's gotten them a long way. And it's a very emotional thing sometimes for them to address. And so, yes, it's cliche, but man, it's one of the most intractable people problems is someone we've outgrown, but we don't feel like we can let go.
Yeah. And it is hard because you, as a CEO, I have to make decisions that are the greater good. What is going to benefit the company most of all and the most amount of people versus one specific thing. And you can't always share the reasons why decisions are made. And, again, it's just as you get bigger and as things get more complex and more decisions have to be made, you're going to deal with some people not being happy about the decisions that are being made. But the flip side of that is I think that our employees have expressed a lot of trust and that, if there is someone who is not a good fit, people know, like it's not a secret.
Right.
And they know that we will take care of it. We will deal with it. And I think that that's a really important part of trust with the culture that you want to build.
Yeah. It's also what I find is a huge part of trust with your A players, because what happens is they end up carrying the weight for the people who are not performing. And they start to get resentful if leaders don't take care of business in that space because it's exhausting to know that you're doing more than your share and someone's doing less and you're probably making about the same. And it's just eternally frustrating. So,
yeah. And that's, I think, is the biggest part of that firing being part of your culture is that trust you keep with the A players, like you're saying. And I have seen that and experienced that.
So take me back a little bit, if you will, because I am a huge predictive index fan. What got you started down that path, and how's it working for you?
Yeah, so a couple of years ago, trying to think how long ago we've been using PI, probably at least 7 years.
Okay.
As we're growing, we were realizing that we were able to hire the right people who could match the job description, but we're failing at the company. And so we realized we needed a tool, and we looked at StrengthsFinder, we looked at Myers-Briggs, and we looked at Predictive Index. And one of our employees at the time knew a PI implementer, and I was just blown away by the PI. And I'm a huge PI nerd. I'm so obsessed with it. Everyone I meet, I want to give the test to. Right? I'm always guessing what their profile is. But the two questions and just the amount of data, like when I would take those personality tests, for me, they're always completely different. And when I took PI, I couldn't believe how accurate it was, like just eerily. Can you guess what profile I am?
Ooh, venture or maverick or captain? Those are my three guesses.
Captain.
Captain.
Yeah.
No wonder. That makes so much sense because captains are such great cheerleaders for culture and they're so warm and approachable. That makes sense that you would have built a culture that is such a nurturing place and is an award-winning organization.
Yeah. Well, so, when I got the captain data, it even said I talk fast. And I was like, how does it know?
How does it know?
And so we were just amazed by the accuracy of it compared to the other tests and the fact it's only two questions and that it's approved for pre-hire. So the cognitive component.
In a
So
way that StrengthsFinder and Myers-Briggs are not. So it's
yeah.
EEOC compliant. Now, some owners don't care, and if they get in legal hot water, they'll deal with it. But it is nice to know that it's actually legally compliant to do the pre-hire work that many owners want to do with StrengthsFinder because I love Strengths. I worked for Gallup for years, and that's kind of that's their tool, and it's phenomenal. But there's a caution there that it is not approved for hiring, and it doesn't give you the intensity of how much uh, dominance, how much sense of urgency, how much extroversion. And I think it's fascinating. I think my favorite PI analogy is like, if you are hiring for a quality control person and this person is not anal by nature, I don't care if they've been in quality control for 25 years, they're going to cost you money. They're going to miss something that's going to end up back in your lap and it's going to cost you money. And so PI is such a great fast tool to get a sense of, does this person have aptitude to be successful?
Mhm. Yeah,
So,
I think the cognitive piece is really important for us too, because we're very, very fast paced. And when people don't score in the cognitive where we'd like them to be, it generally does show that they have a hard time adjusting to our pace and they're going to fail. So I think that part, we don't ever look at it beyond that initial hire. You don't really need to, but I think it is a telling indicator, and it has like borne out that is how people will perform against that.
in entrepreneurial environments, I see that cognitive, especially in the first 90 days to 6 months, is the most crucial element. Can they keep up the pace? Can they handle the environmental complexity? And in an entrepreneurial environment, you have to be able to keep up and have to be kind of a self-paced learner, that you're not going to be waiting for someone to come teach you something. Going to have to go seek it out, especially in IT. Things are changing all the time, and you have to be good at Googling something. And how does
Yeah.
this work? I haven't seen this before. What have other people tried? And going outside your known context of life.
Yeah, and that's one of the metrics we have in our 30 days is how people can handle the complex environment. Are they able to keep up with the pace? Are they able to self-research things? And if we're not seeing that, it's not, I mean, there's a job for someone like that. It's not with our company. I mean, not in a bad way.
Okay.
It's not for everybody, right? Like the
Yeah.
fast pace and the ability to find your own resources and, to do your research. And we have a ton of documentation and things like that, but they have to be able to like, we can't handhold people, like the pace doesn't allow for that. And other people, like you said, will start to present that.
Not even just the pace, but the environment, right? If I'm either on site with a client or at home on my computer, there isn't a lot of nurturing that's going on. Can I find my people? Yes. Can I? But there's not somebody standing over your shoulder monitoring what you're doing. And even though at least in IT you have lots of good metrics, there are lots of industries I work with that it's so much harder to divine what the right metrics are for a role. You can get there. It just takes work. Whereas IT, there are lots of standards.
Mhm.
Um, from a predictive index standpoint, I'm curious, are there any roles you don't use PI when you're hiring?
No, we use it for every role, even
Every
our
role.
resident support, which is like our most entry level role.
Yeah. Yeah, we use it with convenience store clerks, superintendents of schools, CEOs, CFO. It's all the biggest risk I see when using PI is if we aren't crystal clear on what the ideal candidate looks like, we
Mhm.
can't just use somebody else's template. We need to be really cognizant of, is this the right person for us today and where we want to be tomorrow? That I think is the most critical element of it. So I love hearing that you're having success with it because I've found it to be a really great tool over the last 10 years as well.
What's your profile, by the way?
I'm a venturer, really wide
Okay.
pattern venturer. I'm not quite as warm as I have strengths envy of the captains of the world because they're just so much more easygoing. I have like, I don't know, I'd much rather swim in the deep end than connect with all the people. I just like my people.
Yeah, yeah. In my personal life, I'm extremely introverted, but not
Uh-huh.
in my work life. So it's kind of interesting. Yeah.
Interesting. So I want to rewind again because you said something that was really interesting that I think a lot of remote environments miss or just get wrong, which was around getting really clear on the policies and procedures that make it all work. So tell us a little bit. You said cameras on was the one example you gave. What else do you see that tends to really support the culture you're developing and support clarity of expectations from your team?
Well, I mean, I think you have to have everything written down, it somewhere. You can't hold people accountable to it. I think my new HR manager said something like, "You write the policy for the 1%." It's not going to apply to most of the people, but for the person maybe of a different percentage. But you know what I'm saying? Like, there's a group
Yeah.
of people that you need it for. So I mean, I think it works both in terms of our internal company policies, but just the whole part of EOS with core processes. And so, especially in a remote environment, we have to be really clear on the standardization of the experience with the client. And we're not 100% there. That is an ongoing moving target. We have the awareness and the plans and the rocks to work on it, but it is hard, but we're working on it actively. So I think standardizing the client experience, which goes, or the processes with the client experience, goes again back to the internal culture, because it's clear the way people are expected to be accountable to the way we do things. And if someone is not doing them that way, it stands out as part of the culture. As part of like internal policies. So, Slack is a huge tool. So we run the business on Slack, and then Zoom is our, video messaging system. So we have a lot of rules around Slack usage. Like, it's not a free for all. For example, we are a 24/7 company because our clients are 24/7. We have an after hours team in the Philippines. But people are not supposed to be using Slack after hours. It's it's frowned upon. I don't want people to be checking their Slack, expecting that they have to log in and answer after hours. So we have a whole after hours escalation process and how to contact people if you do need to reach out to somebody. So I think that's important. Another issue when we started using Slack is we noticed that people would ask somebody to do something for them, work related, in Slack, and then it just gets lost, or people get overwhelmed with all these messages coming in. So everything has to be in our ticketing system. And then if you have a question, you have to link it to the ticket so that there's a tracking methodology for it. Yeah, the cameras on, the daily call that we do. I mentioned that we try to have as much, and those are just for fun. We have wildcard questions, or a win, or think.
And that daily call, Amber's with everyone?
Yeah, it's supposed to be. We don't get everybody, but yeah, that's who it's intended for.
Okay. And tell me about, go down this path of the wild card question. I cut you off.
Let me see what we have. So we try to change it up because it gets a little redundant. So we used to have more set questions Win Wednesday and Thankful Thursday and things like that, but we've gone to more wild cards. So Monday is Mindful Monday. What's one fun thing you did over the weekend? This or that Tuesday, which of the two options would you prefer?
Oh, I love this or that. That's such a fun discussion.
Though it's hard to always think of that. We're running out of ideas. Random Wednesday is just an AI question. Thankful Thursday, recognize and thank a coworker for something specific. And then Wildcard Friday is just a random question. So we do that. And then we have our all staff meetings. So our all staff meetings every month, we pick a theme. So everybody picks something for their background. And I like to spend 5 minutes talking about everybody's background and what they're doing. We have a wellness platform, which we're moving to a new one that's going to have recognition as well built into it. So the wellness platform, people earn points in which they can buy things. We do a quarterly mental wellness day, which people get points for. We give people their birthday off. We also have responsible PTO, which is formerly unlimited PTO. We changed the name to responsible PTO.
I like that. I like that. Words matter.
Yes. Yeah. So, we do as much as we can to encourage that work-life balance, which can be hard sometimes. You have a high workload.
Yeah.
And then to reward people for it.
That's phenomenal. I'm stuck on this responsible PTO because I haven't heard it phrased before that way. And I think it really resonates both with owners and with employees. Is this irresponsible, or is this a fair amount of time to take off?
Yeah. And that came from my new HR manager. So I'll give her credit for that. But
she gets credit.
Yeah, it was unlimited PTO, which is not really, it is we don't bank PTO. There's no set amount. But we need people to be responsible. So that's a good way to frame it. And there's a lot of guidelines around it, but it's just, it's a better way to call it, I think.
Yeah. Interesting. One question I feel like is obvious, but I haven't asked you is, what are your core values? What are we holding people accountable to?
You're putting me on the spot because I got to go to our website and just double check them. So I think I know them off the top of my head, but just keep me honest. So first one is collaboration. And so it used to be teamwork, and we changed it to collaboration because it's just more representative of both the client and the employee experience.
Okay.
So that one I think is our strong. Yeah, I mean they're all strong, but that's one of our strongest values. But it's just that mindset of we're not going to be siloed. We're not going to withhold information. The other value is expertise. So expertise, again, we've gone back and forth about if that should be a value, but that is what we do. We are experts to our clients. That's why they hire us. So we want to be experts. So our vision statement is transforming technology, culture, and senior living. And the expertise that we bring is a big part of that. But again, both internally, externally. And then we do a lot of educational resources for the industry. So we have our podcast, Raising Tech. Myself and my chief growth officer do a lot of speaking events across the country. We do webinars. We write a lot of white papers, and we wrote like a whole AI guidebook. We have a lot of free resources for the residents in the senior living community. So that's all kind of going to that expertise. We want people to think of us as like, I need someone to come present to my board. Who can I call? Who's the experts in this? And that does happen. Our third value would be empathy. So, our clients are all not-for-profits. So we really wanted a value that reflected the same value that they have in their mission base. They're not all mission based, but in their service model. And so
Talk about alignment. That's beautiful.
yeah, and so it's alignment with that, but it's also, we want to be the company that when you call IT, you don't feel like you're talking to someone who treats you like you don't know what you're talking about, which I hear from people. Like I call IT and they make me feel like I'm stupid.
Of course you're having problems. You're doing it wrong.
Right. So we want people to live this empathy just in the way they talk to our clients, because again, it goes back to that expertise. We're the experts and they're not. So let's have empathy towards the way we interact with them. And then the last one is integrity. So, I mean, we used to have 6 values, which was I had to go look them up, and we dropped 2 of them and sort of consolidated them. So we used to have impact. And I can't think of the other one, but yeah, integrity was kind of where we wanted to roll that into. Impact is also part of expertise. But, no company ever does anything 100% correct. And we say that to clients up front. We're not going to do everything right. Not every support ticket is going to be handled perfectly. Not every project is going to go according to plan, but we want to have clients where we have a partnership and we have that open communication and we have that dialogue. And if not, then they're not a good client for us. So I think that integrity comes through in admitting when things don't go wrong, but taking the steps to fix that. And again, that's an internal thing too. You want to work with coworkers with integrity, like we talked about earlier.
That's so interesting, Amber, because you just touched on 2 things that in the last 20 years of doing employee engagement research are absolutely foundational. So that probably belies one of the reasons you've had such success in terms of growth and culture. One of them is expertise. And so often when we go to do an engagement pulse with a client, the first time back, employees will say, well, we're not experts, right? But guess what? Our clients, they expect us to be experts. That's why they hire us. And guess what your internal customers expect? Whether it's handling their payroll and HR issues, whether it's, back end, whether it's the night staff that's handling in the Philippines, they expect that expertise. And so claiming it up front, I have a client who in their space, in their workspaces, they have a list of I'm an expert at these things, and their job is to acquire more expertise in more areas. And it's just such an interesting conversation that I always have with employees. And I've never heard anybody use it as one of their core values. So that makes my heart happy. And the other one was talking about setting expectations. And whether it's with our mother-in-laws, with our employees, with our customers, setting those foundational expectations is so valuable. And starting a client relationship with like, we're going to make mistakes. We won't want to, but it will happen. And I just want to praise you and acknowledge that those are 2 statistically foundationally critical elements, and having them move into your core values is amazing.
Thank you. You gave me an idea. I had to write it down. I'm an expert at. I love that. You've given me
It's
some
cool,
ideas.
right? It's like this claim that we make. And I don't know, maybe it's one of your wild card questions or whatever, but it's something we should always be seeking to acquire. And if it's already one of your core values, it's like, hey, here are the things I'm an expert at. It might be outside of work and inside. I'm like an expert at baking sourdough bread, but also at fixing this one issue IT wise.
Yeah, I like it as almost something to incorporate into reviews too. When you want to talk about values on the reviews, that could be a way to
Yeah,
express that value.
I love that. Love this. Collaboration at work. Okay, so I think we're getting close to our time. I want to circle back to some of the things that I heard that I think were really stand out in terms of people who jumped into this podcast looking for things that they could do better. So, one, I think that managed service IT has a leg up on, and probably retail too. I see a lot of retail that has great metrics and getting to some kind of metric for each role to know if they're winning because everyone wants to win at work. No one wants to show up and suck at their job. And having some visible way of knowing how am I doing is a lot better than just asking someone, hey, where I'm at. So that I like renaming employees. I have quite a few clients who call their employees something and allies. Did I write that down right?
Yeah, we're Parasol Alliance, and so we went with allies. Somebody suggested parasols, which I still love, but it didn't win.
Didn't laugh. My daughter's when she was 9, she used to tell me, "Mom, we're the words matter family." I'm like, "We are totally the words matter family." Finding the right word is an art. Um, Figuring out the right policies and procedures was another thing that you talked a lot about, and figuring out what works in our environment, what works for our clients, getting the core values that really align with our work and our clients, I think was really beautiful. Your CEOs, you call them town halls. I think of them as like focus groups really trying to get to what can we do better, I think speaks volumes in terms of your accessibility and approachability, which I think a lot of virtual leaders could adopt. Terminating people who don't fit the culture, just having the courage to follow through on that. I put a star next to the CEO welcome calls with every new employee because
Yeah, one additional thing with that. So it used to just be me doing a welcome call, and we've expanded. So I'm still doing that. We've expanded it to a culture workshop with our whole executive team. Because when we're talking about the values, it reminded me, I'm like, when do we talk about that? So the entire executive team gets on with the new employees once a month, and we talk about each of these values and our vision, and we ask them what resonates with them. How do they think they can best contribute? Talking about the values and kind of get them in that mindset of thinking about them.
that's then they aren't getting just FaceTime with you, they're getting FaceTime with the whole leadership team, hearing their voices and the way that I assume you have some kind of examples to go along with the core values about what that looks like here and
Yeah.
how it plays out. Okay. Of course, I will always tout the value of predictive index because I think it just helps us get it right more often. And that saves us a lot in terms of resources and heartache. I want somebody to give my birthday off. Maybe I'll just start taking it off. And just the phrase around responsible PTO and this takes us back to policies, but I wrote it separately around no Slack after hours or generally not, because I do think that shows a lot of respect for people's real lives, that we spend a lot of time at work. And also we have things that, whether it's our faith, our family, our physical well-being, volunteer work, it gives more headspace to do those things when you don't feel like you're always tethered to a Slack channel. So, what did I miss? Anything else you think is like special sauce that we didn't cover before we?
I feel like there's so many other things we do. I mean, we do specific recognition. I talked about the wellness. We're doing a virtual. So I think you asked me earlier before we were recording about if we get together in person, which we used to do it when we were more based in Wisconsin and Illinois. Now that we're in so many states, we're doing a virtual murder mystery event tonight, which I'm excited about. We have a culture committee, so they host things like we have just it's hosted by leadership. It's once a month and it's just fun games and anybody can join. It's optional. I think I talked about Parasol Academy, which is like our
Yep,
basically a big retention program. Um, I feel like there's more things we do. And it's like some things
I'm
that we've done
sure.
that haven't been that successful. We have a monthly day without meetings, which I
Mm.
never do, but I think some people do that. So that's, yeah, something that has various success based on the person's position, I think.
Yeah, I've heard that come up quite a few times, especially for those of us who spend a lot of time on virtual meetings. It's nice to have I'm not on camera break, but also we make a lot of promises during those meetings and having time to follow up on those things and have some headspace is really valuable. So I've seen a lot of companies do that, whether it's no meeting Fridays or
Yeah, it's
pick a
supposed to
day.
be once a month. But one other thing I thought of really quick, I know I've got a long list already, but something people may not have thought of is we have a Slack PTO. So if someone is like just getting behind in their work, or they're overwhelmed, they can take like a Slack PTO where they're just not on Slack. They're not like, they're basically on PTO, but they're getting work done.
Yeah.
Which is nice to give people that option to take that break.
I do that with my text messages. I don't read a lot of text messages, especially if they're a group text, and I don't ever get any like no one gives me the space, and they still expect me to know all the information, but I just get overwhelmed sometimes with the frequency of communication, and I have a very low information diet, and so sometimes I wish someone gave me the freedom to not consume all that information.
Yeah, you need a PTO, text PTO.
Text PTO. My husband does not appreciate it, I'll tell you that. Okay, Amber, this has been such an engaging conversation. Thank you for your time, for your contributions. I think there's a lot of gold that even if a listener just takes one of these tools, one of these ideas, incorporates them, that will continue down that path to strengthening their culture. And thank you for your time. If someone wants to introduce you to someone who runs a senior living center, how can they get a hold of you?
Website, parasolalliance.com. I'm also on LinkedIn, Amber Bardon. So you can find me there or find me on our website.
Great. And if you're interested in predictive index or employee engagement, or just making sure you've got a team that's doing better at their jobs continuously, I'm also on LinkedIn, and our website is activatehcg, like humancapitalgroup.com. And I'd love to continue the conversation. So thank you, Amber, so much for being here. I learned a lot. So thanks for that.
Thanks for having me.
Well, that's a wrap on this episode of You've Got People Problems. If you got something out of the conversation, make sure to subscribe, leave us a review, and share it with the other leaders in your network, because let's face it, we all have people problems. You can watch full episodes on YouTube or listen on your favorite podcast app. But either way, thanks for listening, and we'll see you next time.